Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube project. This is going to be my second video for the channel. Well, it wasn't supposed to be my second video, possibly would have been my third. However, I misplaced what was supposed to be the clip for the previous video, which essentially was to speak about 5 lessons that I have learned through my time in college. But now with that video basically not being where I can get it, I decided to make a different video to be about 5 lessons I have learned about my life so far. So if you are new to the channel, my name is Falodun and I am a final year student at the Conference University of Science and Technology, and this channel essentially is to share lessons that I've learned through my time in college, but also as a person, and hopefully by my stories to share lessons and maybe even give advice. But I don't think I'm particularly qualified to give anyone any type of advice, I'll say. But still, I believe like there's some value that you can learn from me, and hopefully I can share it to you. And with all of that being said, let us get into today's video. First lesson I would like to point out is failure is a teacher. Like everything you would do in life, chances are you would succeed at some, you'd fail at some. But the only way you'd even fail at anything is if you tried anything, to be honest. And I would understand that, particularly with our upbringing, college life, parenting, chances are you have also been modeled to fear failure. Because, the risk of trying something and not succeeding to the expectation that you want, or to the expectation that is even desired of you, you would fail at things. But then, one of the things I have learned, I would say partially from my time being in college and also just with life in general, is you can take failure to be a good teacher. Essentially, the only way you progress is if you try new things, and chances are by the time you are trying new things, you would not always rock at the things you try out, especially for the first time. Now, you would get some things good on the first time, but some things you would not. And in the days where you don't get it good for the first time, you want to understand that you are not as bad as you think you are. Now, sometimes you could totally suck at some things, I'm not gonna lie, but still you are not ultimately as bad as you think you are, because when you fail at something, it's just that you just didn't get it good the first time. There's this Yoruba proverb that says, for the medicine that doesn't work, it's just a piece of the ingredients that you missed out. What this means essentially is you want to give yourself the leverage of trying things and not getting it. Now, I'm not saying you should always expect yourself to fail, because that's not going to be the right mentality to have. You should always think of yourself to win, to get things good, to get things right. But in the event where you don't, because at times you would not, you don't want to beat yourself into the dirt and call yourself a loser, or ultimately just think that you are not good enough. Chances are, yes, by the time you feel you were not good enough at the time. But if you are able and willing to learn from the mistakes you made, see things that you could have done better, that you didn't do as good a job, you definitely would learn to be better at it. For instance, YouTube is something that I am trying out. I've made videos in the past, fun videos. This I sort of enjoy because it's just me talking about myself. However, I still risk the whole possibility of this not succeeding on the grand scheme of things, but I'm not particularly worried about it, partially because I have failed at a lot of things I have tried before, so this is just going to be a part of it. Another lesson I have learned is consistency is key. For the things that I have done well at and I have excelled at, I have failed most times on the first trial. However, for the reason that I kept showing up every time, every day, sometimes not literally every day, but at every chance that I got to do the thing, I did the thing. Eventually, over time, this compounded to then become something that it then showed that I was good at. One would be my writing. Now, I still do not consider myself a particularly exceptional writer, but I think of myself as a brilliant writer. But that did not happen just by chance. That happened because I took time to write, and I also was willing to take the risk to put myself out there, and not out there totally, but to show to a handful of people or groups of people that I consider would be interested in reading such materials. And also another things that I've done, consistency with my education, because following my first year in college, I didn't do too well in school. My second year was flat out horrible. However, because and at some point I also thought of the idea of basically just dropping out, but I did not because of my friends, interestingly, and that helped me to stay consistent. Even just being present was a part of consistency. Eventually I was able to learn how to maximize the opportunity of being in college, and also just showing up every day for myself in school. I mean, this in a way contributed to the things that helped improve my grades and also kept me in the system of, being educated, I would say. And ultimately, all of this just has brought together a compounding effect that if you are willing to apply in things that you have interest in or things that you are just responsible for, you would see that consistency in the long run does a tremendous amount of good for you. One other lesson I have learned is relationships are important, and this would go as to almost every aspect of my life. I've always had people with me. I've always had friends. I always had people that cared enough and even invested in my progress as well, from my parents to close friends to like a ton of people that I've met all through my life, which is why I would say it is important to form great relationships. Now, understand, you could be an introvert or an extrovert. You could be able to like socialize with people, or maybe you're not. But importantly, you want to make sure that the relationships you have in your life are of good quality. And one way to also know that they're of good quality is you yourself, you are of good quality. I would not consider myself to be like a great person, but I show up for my friends and in ways I can, and they also show up for me in ways I can, and over time we've all contributed to what has then become a symbiotic relationship. As long as you are willing to put effort into the relationship and make sure that it works and make sure that it is something meaningful, chances are you will make good on the investment. And it also happens that not all the investments that you also try out would always be the best. Sometimes people are just people. But in the long run, if you have the mental attitude to want to be a person of value and you add value to people, there is a huge amount of chance that you'd also meet people who would then be valuable to you, and then who would then help you scale in multiple ways that you yourself cannot fathom. Believe me, the amount of opportunities I have gotten from friends, just friends, the idea that I knew someone who knew me, which is really how the world works. The world is not an isolated space. The world is full of people, and you kind of have to know people to be able to get into certain places, get certain privileges in life. But then the thing is, we start at different phases in life, so chances are you are not the son of the president, or maybe even affiliated with someone particularly in power. However, there is a sense of you that has value, so just give that value or add that value to someone you consider important, and then they in their own personal experiences would also have some value, and then they would contribute that value to you, and then that just increases how much value you've got as a person. Then lastly, don't compare yourself to others. I mean, we would get this a whole lot. You get told everybody's running their race, everybody's on a different journey, do your thing. And that is, believe me, that is good advice. The amount of time I have considered myself in the idea of someone else, because I thought that maybe I was better than them, but then they were doing better than me, or the other way around, has just either put me in a very difficult mental position by either frustrating me or just making me have a bloated sense of my own self, both of which are not good. You want to have confidence, definitely, but do not let your confidence come from comparison of others. Let it be comparison of yourself. It sounds cliche where they say you want to make sure that you are better than you were the previous day, but believe me, it's the best thing you can really do for yourself, because you do not know the details of anyone's story, really. Believe me, if you knew the details of everyone's story, you may not envy them as much as you think you do. Now, I'm not saying that everyone out there who is doing good has got something shady going on, but the thing is, what you know is really what you know, and what you know is who you are, and where you are going to. And in times like that, you just want to stay focused on that. Now, if you've learned from your failures, if you've got good relationships, if you are consistent, you don't really have to like worry a whole lot about the mechanics of how the world works completely. Now the flip side to that is you also want to have like a vision for yourself, which could also be in the sense of someone who has achieved more than you. Now this is not the same as comparison. One could call it admiration, you could find another fancy word for it and call it like a mentor. To have someone who you can look up to, that's something I'm going to say like it's a good add-on. But in the chances where you do not have such, you just want to then compare yourself to the way you were previously and just get better than that. Now definitely for some people comparison has helped them. Being fueled by hate or just the desire to be better than the next person has definitely taken them to what would conceive as greater heights. But in the end, you want to get to greater heights with a sense of fulfillment and happiness. You don't want to be there feeling empty or chasing goals that don't particularly align with yourself. You want to chase goals that are meaningful to you and goals that you can feel happy and satisfied with yourself that you achieved for yourself. Yeah. At this point of the video, this is going to be the conclusion of the video because now it has turned really dark and I should be on my way home. And I'm just kind of like just going to close it at this way. So bye bye.